interview is with Darren Scott, and Darren spent 6 years creating an entire feature film, which I think is so cool and so interesting. So we chat all about that. Also, I was actually in a rave scene for the film, so it's interesting to hear about the whole process of creating the entire film. Just any kind of stage that you've ever wanted to hear about filmmaking and making a whole film. It's probably covered in this interview, and I don't want to say too much because Darren said so many interesting things in this interview. So here it is. Hello, so today I am joined by the writer and director of the film All Roads Lead to Home, and I think it's such a cool film that I was honoured to be a small part of. So I wanted to ask you about it because I think it's so ambitious to do feature films, because mostly people make their own shorts, but this is such a big project to take on. It took you 6 years to make. So I just wanted to ask about how it's been different, you making short films versus making a whole feature film.
Yeah, I don't know. My background was theatre, and I'd done a play called Hanging in There, which is about someone surviving testicular cancer. And someone always said, because it was a very successful play, you should make this into a film. And I went, I don't know how to make a film. I'm not a filmmaker. Theatre and film is very, very different. And then it was January the 1st, 2014, the writer of the play went, this is the year we're going to make this film. And I went, okay. I said to him, but we have no money. He said, don't worry about it. And he goes, we've got no cameras. I went, don't worry, we'll find them. And we don't know, and so on and so on. So we ended up, bizarrely, just going from never making a film to making a feature film. So I didn't do the whole short film thing. I literally, Hanging in There was the first film I did, and we went from nothing to that.
So you did your short films after that?
Yeah, and those short films were purely test runs for All Roads Lead to Home.
Really?
So I've done a very unconventional way of doing it. We only did the feature film because we knew that the play had reached out to men. We'd actually saved lives, and we thought that actually, if we could make a film, it could be easier for us to reach out digitally rather than, we can't keep putting on plays every 3 months.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing this feature film, and of course I had to learn very quickly as to the language of film. I actually shot most of it myself. I had to learn how to edit. I never edited before, so it was a massive learning curve. And after 2.5 years, we put it out there. It did very well. We saved another life. We know that. In fact, we heard a story last night where we think it's probably saved another life. Someone actually saw it and went to the doctors, and it was cancer, and they're okay now. When I finished that in 2017, I think April we had the premiere. I thought, well, I've now learned how not to make a film, how not to do it. And sometimes, I mean, maybe this is the story of my life, is I just dive straight into things and then worry about how to do it.
Yeah.
Rather than perhaps doing the right way, going off and learning how to do it and slowly build your way up, perhaps doing short films first before you do feature films. So what we decided in 2000, once we finished the feature, was to go back to square one and actually make some short films. Now, I, at this point, already had the idea for All Roads Lead to Home. I realised I needed to write it, but I'd never written anything before. So I thought, well, the best way for me to start writing was to write a short film. So I wrote a short film called It's a Dog's Life. That was literally my first steps into writing, and that then gave me the confidence to go off and write this film. So we basically did 4 short films in like 3 months, but they were all purely for test runs for ideas that I had for this. So we shot in 4K. We did a short film that was purely without dialogue because I wanted to see if I could tell a story visually with music, because obviously music was quite a big part of this film. And then we did a learning curve, which was an exercise in production design, and it's set in 1989, 88, something like that, which was the same era that All Roads was originally going to be set. So we thought, well, can we do a whole short film whereby there's not a single thing in the frame that's after 1988? And that literally, we had to go and find, but we were replacing books. If the books were after 1988, we took them off the shelves, records, everything. So those three short films were pure exercises. We never even put them into festivals. No one's really seen them. They are on YouTube, but
I've seen them.
Okay, well, there you go. You're the one person who probably saw them. But they were purely for experimentation for me. It was purely to see, can I do this? And I learned a lot more from doing those three shorts than perhaps from the feature film, where I just learned how not to do things. And then by the end of that, at the end of 2017, when I'd done the three shorts, I thought, okay, I'm now ready to take on the second feature film. So it's a very unconventional way of doing things.
I think that's so interesting though. And I do love All Roads Lead to Home. I think it's such a nice feel-good film, but it also covers some quite deep topics. I guess similar to Hanging in There, it's also got some nice messages behind it, and it's got a lot of emotions and a journey to it. So I was wondering how you found the idea for it and what the writing process was like to make it and make sure it wasn't too deep and it wasn't too light, and you had the right mix of everything.
Wow, that's a really good question, because lots of layers, like the film, really. But go back to the first part of your question, where did I get the idea from it? It was the summer of 2014. I was on a break on the first feature film, and I was on holiday in Ibiza, and I was actually prepping for a theatre play that I was doing that Christmas, and it was a dark horror called The Exorcism. And I'm in Ibiza in the sun doing a dark play that I was prepping for, and I thought, this isn't working. It's not really the right environment. An idea came into my head of the well, you've seen the film, but there's a scene where the girl character Amy, as it is now, sort of staggers into a pub and gets drunk, and then gate crashes the other character Matt while he's at a gig. And that was the first thing that I wrote back in 2014. I mean, now it's kind of like, it's not the first scene, and it's slightly changed, but fundamentally that was pretty much how I wrote it, is how it exited, and that was nearly 10 years ago, right? 9 years or so, and so that was the start point. And I think on the plane home, I don't know why, I just because I had the themes already worked out by the end of the holiday. The title is a play on, all roads lead to Rome, and I like the idea of all roads lead to home, and home being really where everything is for you. Home in the sense of the film is probably not a literal home. It's more it's a metaphoric home. It's the place where you feel most comfortable. And obviously Matt and Amy, particularly Amy's journey, is very much about finding where her home is. I had the title, and once I had the title, and once I had the idea, I then spent the next 9 months writing. And here's the story. I dived into writing a screenplay, having never really written before. I'd done the short film, but again, it's all new. And at the end of the 9 months, I sent it off to a script editor, because someone said, "Oh, I've got a friend, he can look at it, he can give you some pointers." I thought, okay, fine. He came back to me within 2 hours. He'd written, he'd read the first 10 or 15 pages and stopped. And he replied back to me going, "You've never written before, have you?"
Oh.
If you could tell that in the first 10 pages of 100. And he said, "If I were you, I would go and find some books on screenplay writing." It's after 9 months of writing this story, have someone tell you that. Yeah. It took me about 6 weeks to get over the shock of that. And then I probably went out and bought some books. And I then spent the next 9 months learning how to screen. I did courses, I read books. For the first time in my life, I actually sort of trained to do something. But I knew that without the script, everything else was pointless. So it was a good 18 months it was another September, the following September, by the time I had the script, that was pretty much what you saw. But it was good because, coming back to your other question, the times were changing. We hadn't quite hit COVID, but I think, you know, Brexit had come in, and things were culturally and socially changing a little bit, and mental health was starting to be a key factor. And I didn't explicitly write a mental health story into this, but it's turned out that way. I did it in a very subtle way, and yet I've been quite staggered this week by how many people have picked up on it. There's a lot of layers to this film, and what I love about it, at the beginning, before we premiered it, I said to the team, I said, you know what, this is a film with lots of layers. Some people are just going to find it entertaining, because obviously my first goal was to make something that engaged with an audience and entertain them. And it could be as superficial as something you put on a Sunday afternoon, it's raining, you've got your chocolate, having a duvet day, you want to watch a feel-good movie, this is the movie for you. But for other people, there's the layering that goes in there. The mental struggle for Amy, for instance, she's her own worst enemy. And Matt's struggle, you know, with his own issues as well. And you can go deeper and deeper and deeper into this. You can question your own ambitions. You can question your own obstacles. Often they're your own obstacles, not somebody else's. And I've been really staggered this week, the amount of people who've come out to me and gone, oh, you know, I'm a bit like Matt. I'm a bit like Amy.
Yeah.
In terms of writing it, Matt and Amy are two versions of me. Matt is the side of me that we've just said, let's just make a film. Let's just go for it. Let's not worry about the consequences. Who cares if we haven't got stuff? You know, let's just do it.
Yeah.
The doer in me is Matt. It's just that, almost like as I was a teenager, just going on and just doing it recklessly, almost not thinking about the consequences necessarily. And then Amy is the other side of me, the sort of more inward side of me, who's like, okay, let's just put the brakes on a little bit. Maybe I can't do this. Am I good enough to do this? The imposter syndrome starts to eke in a little bit. And instead of doing what typically would be done in this movie, whereby you'd have a girl-boy relationship, a romantic relationship, I created a romance, a different kind of romance, which is almost like a brother-sister romance, yeah, buddy kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that allowed me to play the Matt going, let's just do it, and the Amy, no, let's not do it. That conflict between the two of them sort of almost personified the mental situation that I find myself in all the time, and how a lot of people find themselves in. You know, a lot of people have just got these great ideas and they hold themselves back because they just think they're not good enough or something like that. And it's hard. You know, you've just got to find where your home is, literally where your home is, and go, well, this is what makes me feel comfortable. You know, I can do lots, you know, people can do amazing things. They just got to realize that it's in them, and like Amy, overcome it a little bit and just be a bit more like Matt sometimes, and just push on through those obstacles. And you know, in the film, the obstacles just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, which is a nice technique I learned for screenplays. Just keep making it more jeopardy, raise the stakes all the time. But that's what it's like. The closer you get to home, the harder it is to achieve. I mean, so their struggle within the story is my struggle is making the film. It's very meta. It's very layered. That's a complex answer to a really amazing, complex question. But I hope I've tried to answer that clearly.
Yeah,
anyway.
I think you've answered that very well, because I think it was actually quite a complicated question, but I think it's nice that people will see themselves in the film and some part of it will resonate with them. So with the casting search and finding people to do the music for it, I know that in the past, in other films as well, you've searched through people's show reels and online to find musicians. So what's that process like in finding people who will be the right people and who will align with what you're trying to create?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because The traditional route would be that I would put an advert on Spotlight, and only those who perhaps have access to Spotlight going to get access to these sort of jobs and so on. But I was looking for real characters and actors who could bring those kind of realism, and that's a real skill. And it doesn't always come from trained actors. Sometimes they can actually have that ability trained out of them. I'm not saying all of them.
Yeah.
So I wanted to cast the net a little bit wider and make it easier for those who aren't on Spotlight. So we used Mandy. I mean, at the time, okay, Mandy was a lot cheaper, a lot easier for actors to step into, and I put applications on both Spotlight and Mandy. I mean, I think at the moment when I looked at it, because I got asked this question at the Q&A, and it was afterwards. I was thinking, well, that was then. Now Mandy's actually more expensive than Spotlight.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I'm able to put that right, because I mean, back then Mandy was a way of me allowing more people to at least audition and let me know about them.
Yeah.
And I routinely, when I've seen films, short films, I see a lot of local films, and I'd rather work with local actors if I can. If I then go and find them on Mandy or Spotlight or wherever they've got a presence, a website, and then I bookmark it, and then I make some notes about what I liked about their showreel or what I saw them in. It might be like, oh, they would be good as this, and they would be good as this, and I quite like the way they engaged with the camera, and they took the light really well. And it could be really, simple notes, not big details, but notes that I can tag against an actor, which has happened in the case of Phil, who ended up playing Tom. We searched high and low. We must have put out about 6 or 7 castings for him. Couldn't get the right person. And then I thought, why am I bothered? I know the person who can do this. I've seen his showreel 2 years. And I went down and went, okay. And I found a phone number. I had no idea if it was even him. And I just called him randomly and went, is this Phil? And he goes, yeah. I went, are you still acting? He goes, yeah. So he must have been some sort of hiatus, I think, or partly doing something else. And I said, well, do you fancy having a stab at this? And that's how he got in. But pretty much all of the actors came through Mandy at the time. I mean, pretty much everyone was cast 5 years ago, because we were planning on shooting in 2019.
Yeah.
And then obviously the world changed. But I stuck with all the actors where we could, where their circumstances allowed us to carry on, then we did. But yeah, I think good actors are there all the time. I think a lot of actors, we can't find them very easily. I think casting agents are great if you can get to them. Thankfully, I'm not an actor and I don't have this headache, but I am married to an actor, and I know that the pain that she has in getting seen. Yeah. And she's got a big pedigree behind her, and she still struggles.
It's always going to be difficult, isn't it? I've heard of people who have booked big roles at the National Theatre and then don't work for the next 10 years. So
that story is absolutely there. Theatre is particularly difficult, and I think it's particularly difficult for females over the age of 25, 28. Suddenly, traditionally, the roles are not there. I mean, Shakespeare didn't help. You literally come in and you come and play Rosamund, and then basically you disappear until you're old enough to play Lady Macbeth. 20 years later, 25 years later. So, and plays traditionally have been there. I think film's exactly the same. We always joke that if Rhodes had been made by Hollywood, Amy would have been an 18-year-old, and Matt would have been, I don't know, a 33-year-old guy. And that seems to be, there's a dearth of opportunity for female actors, which is why, I don't know whether you know, I cast quite old all the time. I prefer to cast 30-somethings if I can, because male and female, they really struggle to get roles. And yet you have these amazing actors who are 10 years from drama school. They haven't just learned their skill, but they've added real life experience on top of that, and you end up with these really brilliantly rounded actors who nobody wants. So I tend to ride for them particularly. I think that's the hardest thing for actors. They've just got to get themselves good show reels, and of course, to get good show reels, you need to be in something. You can't be in something until you've done a show reel.
It's all very complicated, isn't it?
In a chicken and egg, it's really, really tough. That's why I think there's a vogue now of actors, if they can, making like a show reel from a piece of work, and if they can't get an actual film clip that they've been in, actually create one, because ultimately we just want to see some confidence that you can act.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be brilliantly lit. It doesn't. You just need to show that you can convey emotion through the screen, which is all this is about. When you talk about how this film was an emotional roller coaster, it's because I had actors who could reduce themselves to a naturalistic kind of performance to the point that it almost felt like they weren't acting at times. It just felt as though when you were watching it, you probably felt as though you were just sitting in the room with them, listening to them talking, you know, or when they're on the beach and I shot it through the grass in the foreground to make it feel as if you were literally sitting there with them in conversation. And you need actors who can almost reduce the performance down, not do a big performance.
Yeah.
Just really reduce it down to the point that it just feels very natural.
I think that's what you find, because so much of acting is people coming through theatre and then getting into film. But I've trained mostly in screen, and I think there's a big difference as well, and it's very different skills.
It is. I mean, I've done both theatre directing. Well, I did it first and trained there before I went into film directing, and there's a massive difference in the way I work. My technique with the actors doesn't actually change, because in theatre I actually buck the trend a little bit, and I tried to reduce the performances down to something that was very naturalistic, and I trained that way, and I found my own way of directing actors, which I then do exactly the same with film. However, I think the difference is, as you'll know, is that with theatre, it's all about the words. It's all about the script, which is why you could do theatre in black box and it's still powerful and emotional and engaging. And film, it's all about the setting. You know, when I'm doing a play, I would spend 6 weeks working on every word of the script with the actors to engage with them, so we could do a 2-hour performance non-stop. And I spend 90% of my time with the actors, and then 10% worrying about set and lighting and music and so on. And then with film, it's the opposite. I spend 90% of my time with set and lights and music and sound and everything, and locations, and hardly any time with the actors. If there was anything to come out of the COVID, it gave me another year, having cast them. We were using Zoom, and we were rehearsing over Zoom in all that time. So by the time we came to film, we were a year in rehearsals, to the point that we were reducing the script down, we were trying the script out, we were cutting it, changing it, adapting it. They were finding their characters before they were even on set. And that buddy connection that we see on set was developing.
That's good you had so much rehearsal time. And then how do you go about even filming on a budget with everyone having other commitments in their lives? Like, it's such an ambitious project to do when you don't have a big channel behind it, Netflix behind funding you. How do you do it?
Yeah, I think 6 years ago, someone should have said to me, this is just insane. There's no way you can do this. I mean, you know, you're going to shoot a whole movie in 28 days on a budget in 32 locations, and you're going to put in 20 original songs, and you're going to, I had a budget, and that was money I'd saved out of my own pocket. I mean, I paid for every penny of this. I'm still paying for every penny of this. And I had a budget, and that was based on the belief that I could pay everybody the same rate. So whoever we got, even the big stars like Brian and Linda and so on, they realised that I run a very socialist kind of film set, that everyone's treated the same. I mean, I'd like to think that as an SA, I treated you the same as everybody else, or you at least got the impression that we treated you as the same. We try to engage everybody and deal with everybody the same. So that and once the actors have bought into that idea, then and the crew had bought into that idea, then you know you've got a team that want to do this. So that's the first thing you do. COVID was quite painful financially because we got stopped 4 or 5 times, and every time we stopped, it cost. And then we ended up with bits of film, and then we had to reshoots and so on. But perversely, it gave us time. Every time we stopped, it meant that I had a few more months to save more money up. And then the ambition was getting bigger and bigger. We were realizing we had something quite magical. And then it was a bit like going to Vegas, really. I always say making films is like going to Vegas and gambling. My advice, I'm not a gambler. Well, I am with films, I suppose, but what they say is that you should never go to Vegas with any more money than you're prepared to lose, because then you can go and lose it all and you can have a good time losing it. Yeah. Whereas if you're worried about losing it and you start losing it, you're going to have a terrible time, and then you're going to try and win it back and so on. And I think when you're making a film, you just need to go, this is how much money I'm prepared to lose to finish a film. Because there's no guarantee you're going to sell it. There's no guarantee anyone's going to see it. There's no guarantee it's even going to be good enough to do anything. So you go, right, this is what I'm prepared to lose. Come rain or shine, we'll make this film, and that's it. And then, I'm not sitting and going, that's a lot of money that I personally put into this. I need it back tomorrow. I'm not thinking about that, at all. The problem we had is that the film started to really show promise that we had something really special. And we were sitting there going, well, we could put another song in. And then a song would just appear. And we're like, okay, so now we have to film this. And the ending could be better. How could we do the ending better? Well, we could write a better song. And so the budget went from here to here to here, and it was constantly expanding. I don't know. It's not the way to make a film, but it's also the way to make a film,
But I think that's what's made it so exciting, because I think it's such a nice set in that everyone's there purely for the passion of it, and that's quite exciting. So I know there was quite a few challenges making this film, but can you talk briefly about some of the unexpected challenges that you faced, lessons you learned?
It's hard, really. I think the biggest problem was that there was budget, but there was only budget to do perhaps a 2-day shoot in a 1 day.
Yeah.
What invariably happened is that the 1 day became a 14-hour shoot. So I'm taking the rave, for instance, whereby it was in a wood 10 minutes from our house. And we got there at 8, 9 o'clock. We're dressing the drug den and all that sort of stuff. And we're dressing the rave in multiple wood. And it's gorgeously sunny outside and everyone's having a good time. And then the crew turn up technical crew turn up at midday for us to start shooting at 1, 2 o'clock. So they come in and put the lighting in. So then we're shooting at 2 o'clock, and that goes on to 7, and it's great. So for the technical crew, they've been there 5 hours. For the production crew, we've been there 11 hours at that point. So we're starting to feel it. They're just getting into the groove of it. And we're in the middle of summer. It was late May. And we needed to be dark for all the lights to work, for all the dancing and so on.
Yeah.
So you wait till 10 p.m. before you can shoot them. You need the actors and extras there early, because you need to let them know what's going on. We need to account for them. We don't know how many's going to turn up, so we need to block for it. Meanwhile, we're trying to shoot a caravan scene in the middle of a wood and try and replicate moonlight. So that's taking a bit longer than we want. And then we start to shoot around 10, 11, midnight or whatever it was, the rave. And we realise that we're going to have to do this, not in 2 hours, but in half an hour. And so my brain's going, okay, I can edit it this way, I can do this, and I can do this. And and we're and we realize that when the sun goes in summer, the temperature just dropped from about 20 degrees down to 5 degrees. It was so cold, and I'm worried about is the SAs just going, we've had enough of this, because if they go at this point, that's it. It doesn't matter what we've done the rest of the day. And I can't bring anybody back.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we all stuck it out, didn't we?
We did amazing. I mean, we're all very humble of every supporting artist that came along, because we can see the vision, right? Because you guys didn't even know the script. You didn't even know really what you were doing.
I was like, what am I getting myself in for? Is this where I get murdered? What's going on?
Yeah, you must have just felt like, guys, just turn up at this wood in the middle of nowhere and traipse through these woods, and someone will tell you where to park your car. And honestly, it's not a horror movie. I still think that sequence is just absolutely magical. I mean, it's one of those sequences that just, some people have said that the story just takes you on a journey that makes sense, but it always takes you somewhere where you don't expect it to take you.
Yeah.
And this is one of those areas when you suddenly go from the previous. I'm trying not to give anything away, really, spoiler wise, but yes. The previous scene, you have no idea you'd end up where we do, and yet it sort of makes sense. But it's a different tone, and it feels different, and it feels more dangerous, and it's kind of exciting, and the music is slightly different as well. But yeah, it was, and what I thought when I was editing it is that the original idea was we had a 7-minute piece of that music, and we were going to play it all the way through, and I actually cut it to that.
Yeah.
And when I watched it, I thought, well, effectively what we're saying to the audience is that everything that you see happens within a 7-minute period.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give an idea that time was moving on. They weren't there for 7 minutes. They might have been there for an hour or two.
Yes.
And the only way I could do that was to use different pieces of music. So we had a really difficult thing that I actually cut that whole 10-minute sequence to that one track. And then we had to go and put in 3 other pieces of music, which was really difficult. We had to make sure that they were the same tempo, so that I could literally put them in the same slots. And then I had to make sure that, because otherwise my edit wouldn't have worked. But yeah, hopefully, I mean, when you saw it, you probably thought, I was expecting that, and it's this. And
no, I'm going to be honest. When I was watching the film, I kind of forgot I was in it. Like, I was just so immersed in it. I think it's such a great film, and it was such a great showing of it. So you've shown it at one festival now. So with festivals and distribution, I know you've talked about it before, but how do you even approach what you want to do and deciding what you want to do with it as an independent film?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because, you go onto Film Freeway, which is the way you submit your films to festivals. And there's about 200 of them that immediately pop up and go, spend some money on us, we'll come and see you. And the number of emails and messages I've had to serve through social media from festivals want me in there. But you have to be really canny. You have to not dilute your product. So like if we're in 30 festivals, people are going to get bored of hearing us and seeing us on social media. So at the point, they'll actually switch off. Whereas what you need to do is a bit like jam donuts, you eat them every day, they're sickly, but if you have them once a month or once a couple of weeks, then they're amazing. So I want to treat the film a bit like a donut, really, and just kind of be very selective where we put them. So I also want to be there because I feel I want to engage with the people coming to the audience. There's more to this story than I put on screen. There's a lot of layering, as we've talked about, and I think once I explain that to people in Q&As, suddenly they think, wow, I want to see it again, and now I understand, and I recognize these things. So to do that, I've tried to limit myself to one festival a month for the next 6 or 7 months, and I've tried to put them around the regions. So we've got a couple in London, but another one here in the Midlands, and Northampton, hopefully we're in, because I know there was at least 200 people who wanted to get to Birmingham and couldn't get in because we'd sold out. So I want to try and give them an opportunity to come and see it in a cinema and meet the cast and crew. so you might get another chance to go and see it. So we're cherry picking festivals that traditionally love independent movies, like feature films, not just short films, and give ourselves some breathing space, enjoy the kind of festival run, enjoy the feedback from an audience and from the festivals themselves, whilst we work the next bit out. I mean, you probably noticed there hasn't even been a trailer for this. I was going to do a trailer if we couldn't sell the seats at Birmingham, but we sold out after 10 days. So I thought, well, I'm still trying to finish the movie. I won't bother with a trailer. I don't need it.
Yeah.
Now we've got through the festival, I'm going to cut a trailer in the next couple of weeks, and that will be in advance of our festival run. And then we've got a couple of avenues for distribution. But again, we have a real desire to sort of not just take the first deal, because we probably will get a deal with this film. And the better we do at festivals, the easier that will make. I absolutely loved having an audience see in a cinema the other day, and it convinced me that this film needs to be seen in cinema. So whatever we do, I'm very determined, even if I have to personally put it into independent cinemas. And there are plenty around the UK. I mean, last week I went and got all the numbers and names of everybody for that. So if I have to do it myself, my plan is this is Matt again. I'm just going to try and get into cinemas. Yeah. It won't make any money, but that's not what this is about. It's about connecting to an audience through a medium of cinema, because I love cinema and I love going to the movies and sitting there with popcorn and watching films on a big screen. And I think we probably watched on the biggest festival screen in the country. You know, that screen was huge.
It really was.
Scary it was, but it's given me confidence that this film can travel. So I'd like to do that, but again, that could be a condition of a distribution deal. They need to be able to put us into cinemas.
It's all very exciting. And do you finally have any advice? There's also another question after this, but do you have any advice for people who want to do the same thing as you?
Well, don't do it the way I did it. It's a long journey. It costs a lot of money. No, I think I was talking to quite a few people at the awards gala last night, actually. Like, how'd you do it? What would you do? And I say that if you're particularly interested in filmmaking, right, you make a film several times. The first time I made the film was when I wrote the script, and then wrote it again, completely wrote it again. And I think if you're really interested in making a film, get that bit right first. Because if you get the right script, you may not need to do what I did. Someone might go, wow, that's a great script. Here's some money. Or, wow, can I buy it off you and I'll make it? Or, you might find a director who might like the script. And you can go, well, I wrote it and I want to be in it. And then you get to act in it and let somebody else take the pain of how we fund it and so on. So I think get the script right, because you've made a film when you've written the script. You make it again when you film it. That's the hard bit. That's the expensive bit. But I really made this when I edited it. I had to my first cut was 2 hours 25 and we got down to 1 hour 40. So I cut 40 minutes of really good stuff. So you think there's a good movie. There's half a good movie on the floor that we never used. So I would say is write a good script. Don't be limited by your budget. Just be limited by your ideas, or perversely, don't be limited at all. Just write something original, because there are directors out there who really want to make films and can't write. I couldn't write. I was lucky. So it's tough. It's really tough out there, actually. We find it tough, but I think if you're, say, your generation, who are the future, I think it's really, really tough for you guys at the moment. There's not a lot of work. There's not a lot of opportunity. That's why I do the mentorship programs and help guide people through. And we've had my AD, for instance, we mentored her through it. And then she went and got a £33,000 award to do a documentary, which is amazing.
That's so good.
and she's working with the other AD that we brought in, and they're making films together. They've gone up to Edinburgh this year with a play. So that just comes from partly having the confidence to go, well, actually, he had faith in me, so really just have faith in myself to overcome those barriers. A bit like Amy. It sounds simplistic. It's I know it's a lot more than that. Here's something I was taught when I was really young. Right, to succeed, you just need to be better than average. Okay, and most people, they'll start an idea and they'll fail very quickly. They only need to be here, but they stop here. They go, oh, it's a bit hard, or I don't know how to do it. You don't need to get to here. You just need to get to here. And if you get to here, you're already ahead of the game. You're already ahead of everybody else around you. So, you know, in my case with Rose, I was aiming right up here. And I knew that even if we did half as good, we were here, we're still winning.
Yeah.
We still would have had a good movie. And then with a bit of, to be fair, you know, we had a great cast, we had great crew, we had great supporting artists, we had people who prepared to sit there till 2 a.m. dancing to the same tune. You know, but because we aimed high, even if we just didn't quite get there, we were still going to get somewhere good. And my advice to anybody is the advice I was given when I started out: just be better than average. It sounds a very defeatist thing to say, but so many people don't even get there. And if you're there, you're already in the top cohort, you're already succeeding. And then when you're there, if you just push a bit harder, you can then start pushing on through. There's a guy who came out of university and he wants to be a director. I've got no doubt that he's going to be just brilliant. But at the moment, he's got no opportunity. So he said, well, what can I do? I went, well, we need an assistant sound. You done it before? He goes, no. I said, well. So I spoke to the sound guy and I said, well, can you mentor him? He goes, okay, I could do with a hand. I can show him what to do. I said, so this guy said, well, go and do assistant sound. Okay. So he did 5 days as assistant sound. And then the next time he said, can you just be a runner here? When we came to do the gig, he was assistant director. I just said, my other assistant directors are all working with the crowd. They're doing this. I need someone to fill in. Can you do it? He goes, okay, I did it. The confidence, right? So, and at the end of it, I was talking to him. I said, you're going to go a long way. And because you were prepared to do anything on set, even though it's not what you wanted to do, it'll make you a better director. You now fully understand the sound department, which is a major part of film. And so many directors don't understand sound. Yeah. But now you do. You've had an experience of that. You've had an experience in costume. You've had an experience. You know what I mean? You are going to be a better director because you're going to understand all these departments. And you're going to need to do that as a director. So I think there's the thing. Aim to just be better than average. And B, take any opportunity you get, even if it's not what you think you want to do. You know, if you came not to, you go, I want to be any film. I went, can you do makeup? Or can you do costume or sound? Say yes.
And finally, do you have anything you want to say or promote?
I've got a little film, or I sleep to home. If you see, yeah, that's all I've been doing for 6 years, pretty much, and that's all I've got to promote. There is an Instagram account. It's All Roads Lead to Home _movie. I think that would be a good place to start because obviously from this conversation, everybody's going to want to see this now.
Yeah.
And that's probably the place to find out where we're going to be playing next. And also, we've been talking about what it takes to get on in the and the sacrifices and so on. But occasionally, good things happen. Last night, we won the Audience Award. I don't know if you can see that.
Yes.
The Birmingham Film Festival, we got the Audience Award for Best Film. It's still not sunk in, actually, but it's the first award I've ever won. But it's the start of something really good for us, I think.
Yes, it's very exciting. So congratulations on your award and thank you so much for your time in doing this.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I will link the All Roads Lead to Home Instagram in the description, so I'd really recommend keeping up to date with that and going to watch the film if you can, because I genuinely think it's such a beautiful film and I really enjoyed watching it, so I'd really recommend. And thank you to Darren again for taking the time to do this. And I actually have quite a few interviews coming up, so please subscribe so you can keep up to date with all of my future interviews. And thank you so much for watching. Bye!